Welcome back. We're going to take a short break with the Roy Coons case, and I'm joined by Brian Ross to give us an update on the Epstein and Acosta situation. Welcome, Brian Ross.
Brian, good to be here. Well, this morning, a surprise development. The Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, resigned, or said he was going to resign. He appeared with the president outside the White House, the president making clear that it was not his call, it was Acosta's call. Acosta said it was the right thing to do.
Made a deal that people were happy with, and then 12 years later, they're not happy with it. You'll have to figure all of that out. But the fact is, he has been a fantastic Secretary of Labor. And Alex called me this morning, and he wanted to see me. And I actually said, well, we have the press right out here, so perhaps you just want to say it to the press. But I just want to let you know, this was him, not me, because I'm with him. He's a tremendous talent. He's a Hispanic man. He went to Harvard, a great student. And in so many ways, I just hate what he's saying now, because we're going to miss him. But please, Alex.
I have seen coverage of this case that is over 12 years old, that has input and vetting at multiple levels of the Department of Justice. And as I look forward, I do not think it is right and fair for this administration's Labor Department to have Epstein as the focus rather than the incredible economy that we have today. And so I called the president this morning. I told him that I thought the right thing was to step aside.
Notably, Acosta did not apologize to the victims or express any regrets. Part of the problem was when he cut this deal with Epstein, he agreed with Epstein's lawyers to keep it quiet. He did not notify the victims or keep them apprised of what was going on in violation of the law. So there was a lot there that was not very good. Acosta's defense had been that he thought he made sure that Epstein served time in jail, but he served only 13 months in jail, and 5 days a week he was allowed to leave the private wing of the county jail in Florida and go to his luxurious office. So, Brian, it was a sweetheart deal that just did not stand up to much scrutiny.
I'm waiting for the day that my clients can get that kind of deal. Yeah. You're in jail for maybe on the weekends, you get to go out to your private home. So this is an interesting development. He's stepping down, as you're saying, not saying admitting any wrongdoing. But this part about having to interact with the victims or the alleged victims, why did that seem like a huge drop of the ball?
Absolutely. Well, there's a federal law that actually requires prosecutors in such sex abuse cases to keep the victims informed, to keep them apprised, and to check in with them to see if what's going on is appropriate from their point of view. That's the way to make sure more victims come forward and they don't feel they're stigmatized. Acosta and his team at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami failed to do that back in 2007, 2008, and emails uncovered by the Miami Herald in an incredible piece of investigative reporting disclosed that the prosecutors are actually working hand in glove with Epstein's lawyers to make sure the outside world didn't know about this and that the victims were not informed. And that a federal judge has already ruled was illegal. And as well, Brian, underway now is an internal investigation by the Department of Justice into how this case was handled. I don't think the troubles for Acosta are over by any means just because he resigned today.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I think when President Donald Trump steps out there with him, it's curious. Is he there to kind of give a cover to say, well, he's a good guy, he shouldn't have future problems? Or are we going to be expecting maybe the president stepping in if Acosta does have his feet held to the fire? If this failure does rise to a level of creating a serious problem, one, what could happen to Acosta? And two, could the president save him?
Well, the president here took the position that he's with him. He's with Acosta, which is a surprising development because, after all, Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, at one point was a very good friend of Donald Trump. And there are all kinds of allegations about what went on and questions raised about Trump's relationship with Epstein at the very time Epstein was apparently abusing these underage girls. In fact, Trump was famously quoted as saying, we know he likes girls as much as I do. Many of them are on the young side. So there are lots of questions for Donald Trump about his relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, Brian, Epstein now is still in custody, and his lawyers are arguing he should be released on bail. There'll be a hearing this coming Monday.
Okay. And with bail, as always, the question is whether or not that person will return to court and whether or not that person has the funds required to ensure that. For some people, for me, $100 bail, I'm definitely coming to court. The question is for Epstein, how much should that be? I guess that's the next step for him.
Right. Well, his lawyers have told the judge he's prepared to put up his $77 million mansion here in New York City, as well as perhaps his private jets, that he'll wear a GPS ankle bracelet, and he'll hire his own private armed guards to make sure he doesn't flee. Prosecutors claim he is a huge flight risk and also a danger to the community, especially after they discovered in a raid on his mansion, they discovered hundreds of pictures of nude, naked young women. Many of them, according to the FBI, were underage women, which suggests he's not really learned the error of his ways.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting as how this progresses and this develops. Again, when you put up the house for bond or bail, you don't lose that outright. You're merely just saying, if I do not come back to court, you may begin the proceedings to take that away from me. So it's not really he's losing anything. He's just kind of saying, maybe if I fail in this. In terms of the bond hearing, how do you see this playing out? Do you see this working out favorably for him? Maybe he will be able to get all this situated and be a free man, or do you think they might come down a little harshly on him?
Well, the Bail Reform Acts actually say, of course, this is not to punish, this is to make sure, guarantee you show up. On the other hand, though, here's a man who faces, if found guilty, 45 years behind bars at age 66, Jeffrey Epstein, 66. That's essentially a life sentence, and prosecutors argue that's a huge incentive for him to flee somewhere where he could perhaps escape prosecution. Epstein's lawyers say he'll sign an agreement to be extradited from any location in the world. He wants to go to trial, and they gave a glimpse of their defense strategy, which is that it's not fair to prosecute him now for crimes which he was already prosecuted and punished for. That goes back to the sweetheart deal that Acosta made with him when Acosta was the U.S. attorney in Miami in 2008.
Not fair, and also the concept of double jeopardy also comes up as to whether or not it's legally possible. Brian Ross, I want to thank you for coming in and filling us all in on the Epstein and Acosta handling.